Hi, welcome to Wine with Chris. Welcome to the tasting room. Today is possibly the most special video of the series so far because it's a big celebration. In fact, it's a birthday celebration. Big birthday for my father, the man that got me into wine in the first place, and it's one of those birthdays ending in a zero. So we're going to go big and we're going to go special today. And you can see it right here beside me. And we've got two greats of the Syrah Shiraz world. Now on the right here we've got Peter Lehmann's Stonewall Shiraz from Barossa. It's the 2012 vintage. 2012, as far as I know, is the best vintage in the Barossa region of Australia for the last 20 years. It was a low yielding vintage and it produced stellar wines of grace and intensity. And it's also a special wine for me and my father because on the last birthday that ended with a zero of his, I managed to get hold of a vertical Magnum vintage of Shiraz, Stonewall Shiraz from 2001, 2002 and I believe 2004. And we got 3 Magnums each, and they've been wonderful party accompaniments over the last 10 years for the family and for friends. So we're going back there. It was an obvious choice. But another interesting thing happened was when my father came over during in between lockdowns last autumn, and we cracked open one of these guys. New to me last year. It's the Kershaw Elgin Syrah. So Shiraz, cool climate Shiraz from South Africa. And I'd never tried this before until it was introduced to me by 2 friends of the channel last year, and it blew me away to the extent that it was my favourite red wine of last year. When my father was over in October with my brother, we cracked open a bottle each of these. The night was getting on a bit, that's my excuse, but when my brother served these to me blind, I couldn't tell the difference. I picked it wrong once, and I made him do it again, and I picked it wrong the second time as well. So these are outstanding examples of New World Shiraz, and they're both actually around about the same price, around about 35, just under £40 per bottle. So I've had them open for probably the last 90 minutes at least, because these are big guns and they needed to breathe. This is the Kershaw here in my left hand, and here's the Stonewall Shiraz in my right hand. It's hard to know whether that'll come across in the video, but what struck me immediately when I poured these wines is the younger wine, the 2015 Kershaw, actually shows more age. I don't know if that's clear there. Big glycerol levels there, but it's got that brown rustic tinge. Whereas the Stonewall Shiraz, 3 years older, is deep purple, very opaque. Again, lots of glycerol around the glass, but no real hints of age, even though it's almost a decade old. So we're going to give these a go. I'm going to give them a taste, and then I might splice the video and do a blind taste and see if I can go for third time lucky. But first of all, let's give these a spin. Now, I did have a taste of them before I came on the channel, and the problem I'm going to face here within a 10-odd minute video is that these things last in your mouth for minutes. It really is incredible and striking, the depth and structure and longevity of these wines in the mouth. So let's give it a go on the Kershaw. And when I was smelling them before the video, the Kershaw is much more expressive on the nose. It's got the classic Shiraz pepper, real peppery smell. And interestingly, I was on Kershaw's website earlier today, and just to interrupt myself, 2015, again, people in the channel will know more about this than me, but my understanding is that, along with 2017, is the best vintage over a decade in South Africa. And I should point out, I'm not going to say too much about either of these wines because friends of the channel, maybe watching this video, will know a lot more about this than I do, and a lot more about this than I do. But anyway, back to the Kershaw. When I was on the website of Kershaw earlier on today, which again is a fabulous website and I'd encourage you to go there, one thing struck out to me was the phrase medicinal notes, and that struck me as I'm not sure I want medicinal notes, but actually in a good way I can really smell that coming through. I'm getting the red fruits coming through, but there is, I don't know whether it's a menthol or some sort of a medicinal note, maybe just because I've read it, but it does put a nice name on what it is that I'm smelling. Richard Kershaw is actually from the UK. originally. He is the only master of wine in South Africa today, as far as I know. And interestingly, he is apparently, according to his website, one of only 10 masters of wine in the world who are actively making their own wines. And his whole idea in Kershaw is he's got his vineyard in the Elgin region, just sort of northwest of Hermanus, in the Western Cape. It's a little bit up in altitude. It's very clonal specific, so he really picks the particular vine clones that he wants for each plot, and then it's very plot or terroir specific. It benefits from the cool climate coming off the ocean, wide variation between the heat in the day and the cool in the night, and he believes this produces a unique Shiraz in South African terms, and he says it harks back to a northern Rhone in terms of its flavour and its structure. So let's give that a quick go. It's tough to do this on the channel because I don't want to swallow the wine. I just want to let it both of these wines are the types of wines that they're quite muted when you first take them into your mouth, but they just expand and evolve and metamorphose into something increasing with every second that you have them. And then down the throat, and again I'm getting intense flavours coming through from that, even though it's long gone from my mouth. It's not, if you think of Shiraz, I used to sort of be scared of Shiraz in terms of New World Shiraz because of the big, jammy, thick, sort of sugary, glycerine type of thing that it could be. And definitely the Kershaw is none of that. It's quite, I don't want to use again a negative word, but it's quite dilute, and a little bit, I don't want to say muted because it isn't, but a little bit dilute. So there's definitely more of a wateriness to it than there is a huge body. But again, I can't emphasize enough that I mean that in the positive way, not in a negative way. Anyway, let's just move to the Stonewall Shiraz. And these things just coat your mouth, so you definitely need to cleanse the palate between them. So moving on to the Stonewall Shiraz. Interestingly, the Kershaw, he says, key to his success is the grapes from picking are no more than 15 minutes from the cellar, from the vineyard, from where they are made into wine, because he believes that it's critical to try and get them into place, off the vines, into place and being made into wine without too unnecessary crushing or oxidation as quickly as possible. By contrast, the Stonewall Shiraz, Peter Lehmann, one of the legends of Australian wine back in the 80s, and his idea was different. In Barossa Valley, it's very much the sort of farmer-led. So there aren't maybe as many vineyards as you might think. There are huge swathes of the Barossa Valley that are grown, the vines are grown not by winemakers but by farmers. So Peter Lehmann, his trick is to source the most intense, the highest quality, smallest, most intense berry grapes of the vintage from across the Barossa Valley and co-opt them into his blended Shiraz. So back to this, you can see the legs there. And this is much more muted on the nose. It gives hints of toastiness and of warm fires and of Christmas and of dark nights and lashing rain, but not in a major way. You've got to go looking for it. And that follows through in the mouth. The interesting thing is, if anything's going to be big and jammy and overwhelming and peppery and overwhelming for your senses, it's going to be a South Australian Shiraz. But again, this is not that, and I think that's why I got confused last year. It tasting today, definitely fuller in the mouth than the Kershaw, but if it was a big, lacquery, fruit-busting wine, it wouldn't be a wine for me. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that is one of my favourite wines and has been for many years. So I think both of these things are classic. They are slightly different. They're trying to hit a different mark than let's say a northern Rhone, which is obviously also Shiraz or Syrah. So there is that distinction, but they have really reined things in. I think maybe that, you know, the rains have been held in on the Kershaw by the fact of the climate. Maybe that happens a little bit more naturally. But I suspect that there is very judicious fruit picking and selection and wine making that keeps this from overwhelming the palate and just turning into a blockbuster wine. And both of them are just fantastic creations. That the best vintage for 20 years, that the best vintage of the decade along with the 17, and they are both absolutely singing. Our trusty videographer has now switched the wines. I have my ears blocked and my eyes closed, so I don't know what's happening. I've also turned on the lights. Let's give these a go, see if I'm any good at the blind tasting. Just from I was saying earlier, the Kershaw looks older. That's all very well when you know which one's which. I'm not sure I'm seeing age on either of those. If I had to hazard a guess, I think there's more age on the one on the right. But let's move through. But that's very expressive on the nose, and I said the Kershaw was more expressive on the nose. Gosh, this could be the end of my channel. We need a more expert presenter. And that's very muted on the nose. So I've got the look telling me one thing, the nose telling me another thing. It'll have to come down to the taste. That's quite full in the mouth. That's quite full in the mouth. I'm not getting that kind of almost European sense. It tastes more New World. And I noticed earlier, I didn't mention it, but I think when I said about the dilute nature or the watery nature of the Kershaw, which are terrible words and I need better words, I think what I meant was European. Just more classic, less fruit expressive. Let's see. So thinking maybe this should be a little bit more European tasting. I'm completely blind. I really am completely blind. So I had to cut there for a second, not because I'm going to cheat, but just because I didn't want it to be a really boring 90 seconds while I had to think. I think it's all relative. I think I was saying that one is actually not that European and very expressive, but then when I moved on to this one, it was more so. So I suppose if we're looking for Northern Rhone, sort of stately, slightly austere, you've got the Kershaw coming in here, and then the Stonewall Shiraz coming in here. So I'm going to say, based on, I think the look of that's more tan looking, and the taste is more European, even though it's very expressive, whereas that is more New Worldy. So I'm going to say that, and this is the way we did it, I'm going to say that this wine, which started on this mat, is the one that's ended up on this mat. Is that correct or incorrect? Oh, and there you go. Third time lucky. So I've got it right. So this is the Kershaw, this is the Shiraz. But if I've given you any sense, it's one of two things. A, I'm a crap taster of wines blind, and many of you have experienced that, so you know that I'm not great. But secondly, maybe, hopefully more of interest is the fact that these are from completely different parts of the world. They're made in very different styles. One's a blend from all over the Barossa Valley. One is literally taken from a particular clonal variety of a particular plot on a high altitude hillside near Hermanus. And they're producing world-class wines. Both of these wines would stand up to any Northern Rhone that I've had favourably, and I love Northern Rhone. And they're made in such different ways, and yet they are not dissimilar. And I think what binds them together, as I said to you earlier in the piece, 2012 in the Barossa Valley was a vintage that was characterized by grace and intensity. I think both these wines have grace in abundance. I'd say maybe the Kershaw has slightly more grace than the Stonewall Shiraz. The Stonewall Shiraz slightly more intensity than the Kershaw, but between them both I couldn't pick a winner. They're both fabulous wines. And to get back to the real reason for the video clip and for doing this video, happy birthday, Dad. I'm glad we got to taste these together along with my brother earlier last year, and I'm looking forward to the time very soon when we can do it all again. Happy birthday. Hope you all enjoyed watching the video. If you liked it, subscribe. If you've already subscribed and you want notices, click the bell. I'll look forward to seeing you back in the tasting room, outside, or down in the cellar again very soon. Thanks and goodbye.